So this is in the matter of the people of the state of Michigan versus Marcus Monroe, file number 22-20886 FC. I have Odetella appearing on behalf of Mr. Monroe. And this is Mr. Hartung's case, so Douglas Hartung appearing on behalf of the people. This is the date and time set for pre-trial. Mr. Odetella, how would you like to proceed today?
Your Honor, we have reached an agreement with the prosecution, and we have would like to plea in this matter.
Would someone like to place the agreement on the record?
Mr. Hartung, if you would like to set that out, we'd appreciate it, sir.
Sure, I can do that. This is my understanding, Your Honor. We'll move to add a count, I believe a count 5 to the information, and the count 5 will be for felonious assault. Mr. Monroe will enter a guilty plea to that particular charge. The other counts would be dismissed as sentencing. He would have an obligation to testify truthfully in the upcoming trial against co-participants Skysham Tyndall and William Dillard, if that becomes necessary. He will set up a time for an officer to come over and take a statement from him between now and the time of the trial. He's expected to give a full and honest and complete statement at that point in time. He will give a summary of that statement on the record today as a part of his plea. We've agreed that the sentencing in this matter will be within guidelines. He will get full credit for the time he's been in jail. He's been in jail for, I believe, the better part of a year. Is that correct, Mr. Odetella?
That's correct.
And the resolution of this case does not, at this point in time, act as a resolution in any way of his other pending case, which is set for trial at the end of July in this court. We're still working on trying to resolve that case, and this does not affect that at this point. I think that covers it.
All right, Mr. Odetella, is that a correct summary of the plea as you understand it?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, so Mr. Monroe, you want to raise your right hand for me? Do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, sir, can you state your full name for the record?
Marcus DeAndre Monroe.
Okay, so Mr. Monroe, you've heard the statement of your attorney and the prosecuting attorney. Is it your intention to plead guilty to count 5, felonious assault, which carries a maximum penalty of up to 4 years in prison? But there is a Killebrew agreement that you would be sentenced within the guidelines. You would receive credit for all the time you've served, and you must testify against your co-defendant. So is it your intention to plead guilty to that charge?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Are you satisfied with Mr. Odetella and the advice that he has given you?
Yes.
Okay. Neither, other than that agreement, neither the prosecutor, the defendant, nor anyone on the defendant's behalf has discussed any other possible sentence with the court. Is that correct, Mr. Hartung?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Odetella?
Yes, Your Honor.
And Mr. Monroe, is that correct as far as you're aware?
Yeah.
If a guilty plea is accepted, there will be no trial. This means that you will be giving up rights you would have had at trial. I'm going to explain those rights to you now to make sure that you understand them. You have a right to a speedy public trial by jury. You may ask for a non-jury trial, and if the prosecutor and court agree, you can have a non-jury trial. You have the right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. You have the right to have the prosecuting attorney prove beyond a reasonable doubt that you are guilty, and you do not have to prove anything. You have the right to be present at trial and have witnesses against you appear at your trial and to ask those witnesses questions. You have the right to have the court order any witnesses you have for your defense to appear at the trial. You have the right to remain silent during your trial and not to have your silence used against you. However, you also have the right to testify at your trial if you want to testify. Do you understand that if your plea is accepted, you may be giving up the right to appeal issues that would otherwise be appealable if you were convicted at trial? Do you understand that, Mr. Monroe?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you understand that any appeal from the conviction and sentence pursuant to the plea would be by application for leave to appeal and not by right? Do you understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
If you are not a citizen of the United States of America, a conviction of a crime may result in deportation, exclusion from admission to the United States of America, or denial of naturalization. Do you have any questions about the rights that I've given to you?
No.
All right, so Mr. Monroe, how do you wish to plead to the charge that on or about June 26th of 2021 in Madison Township in the county of Lenawee that you did commit the offense of felonious assault?
Guilty.
Okay, has anyone made any threats or promises to you to induce you to plead guilty to this charge?
No.
Do you understand that if I accept this plea, you will be giving up any and all claims that your plea is given as a result of promises or threats that were not disclosed to the court on the record during this hearing, or that it was not your own choice to enter the plea? Do you understand that, Mr. Monroe?
Yes.
Is the prosecutor or defense counsel aware of any promises or threats or inducements other than the plea bargain to induce the defendant to plead guilty? Mr. Hartung?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Otatella?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Monroe, has your attorney promised you any particular sentence or estimated what your sentence will be other than the agreement that was placed on the record?
No.
Okay, is it your own choice to plead guilty?
Yeah.
All right, so I don't know, Mr. Otatella or Mr. Hartung, because of the nature of the plea, if either of you wish to voir dire or place factual basis on the record, or do you want me?
I'd be happy with having Mr. Otatella place that, ask those questions on the record, and I'll happily help him at any point if he needs help.
Okay,
All right, Mr. Monroe, on the date in question, did you have a, let's see how we want to proceed with it.
well, let me, Mr. Monroe, let's start with this. On June 26th of 2021, were you in Madison Township in the county of Lenawee?
Yes.
Okay, then go ahead, Mr. Otatella.
Okay. Did you have a weapon in your possession on that date, Mr. Monroe?
Yes.
And did you point said weapon at the victim on that date?
Yes.
And did you place the victim in a fear on that date?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I believe we've established the factual basis.
Mr. Hartung?
Okay, so let's amplify that a bit, Mr. Otatella. Mr. Monroe, I'll ask you a few questions. That's okay. Is that all right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So what type of weapon did you have?
380 handgun.
And was that your weapon?
It was mine at the time. Yeah.
Okay. Where did this event occur at?
Madison Township, on Cloverdale Street.
Whose house were you at? Were you at a party that night?
Yeah.
Whose house were you at?
Diamond Russell.
Okay.
What was the name again? Mr. Hartung, we didn't catch that name.
Diamond Russell.
What's first name?
Diamond.
Diamond.
Spell that?
Diamond.
Diamond, okay, got it. All right, never mind.
And about what time did this incident occur, Mr. Monroe, if you remember?
If I remember correctly, probably around midnight, going on midnight.
And tell us what happened.
Car came approaching down the street. Slow pace, windows down. I seen two masked men, two men with ski masks. As they got closer, I seen the driver wave a gun. I opened fire on him. They drove off. I turned around. I see my co-defendant, William Diller, wrestling with a gun with another individual that I couldn't make out. Will Diller had got the gun from him. The car went down the street, made a U-turn. At that point, I took cover again behind the car. When they came back, they opened fire on me. I returned fire again, as well as my co-defendant. And that's what happened.
You said you saw Mr. Dillard wrestling with a gun?
Yes,
What does that mean, wrestling with a gun?
like he was trying to take a gun from another individual.
All right, did you see Mr. Dillard fire the weapon?
I didn't see him visually, but he was next to me and I heard the shot, so I assumed that it was him firing.
How close was he to you?
I say a couple feet, like side by side. I was kind of like in front of him though.
Was there anybody else next to him at that point in time that you were aware of?
No, there was a crowd more of it in the back, but they were just other friends I knew and they were basically taking cover from the shooting.
So who do you think he was wrestling with a gun with?
There was a couple individuals out of town that I don't, you know what I'm saying, that I didn't really know personally. I don't even think that he knew him personally. And he was just wrestling. It was like a light-skinned figure. He was just wrestling with the gun. He had finally got it from him.
So your statement was that you saw someone with the windows down and had a gun in his possession.
Yes.
You said he was wearing a mask?
Yeah.
He did not fire at you at that point?
He did not fire first.
You fired at him initially?
Yes.
Did he point the gun at you?
He just waved it in the air. So it's visible for me to see.
And you, how many shots did you fire at the vehicle at that point in time?
At that time, probably like 2 shots.
And how about the person who was right next to you, who you assumed to be William Dillard?
He didn't fire the first round when the car came. The first time he didn't fire.
When did he fire?
He fired when the car came back and returned fire on me.
Where was Sky Tyndall throughout this?
Sky Tyndall was in the house the whole time.
He never came out?
No,
Not even at the end?
no, I went in the house and seen him on the ground. Went in the house to check on my baby mother. My baby mother was at the residence at the time. When I went in the house, Sky Tyndall was on the ground.
When did William Dillard fire a weapon?
After the car came the second time.
Before or after that car shot?
After the car shot at me.
So you're saying that Mr. Dillard fired in self-defense,
Yeah.
but you're not saying that you fired in self-defense.
No, I mean, I was fearing my life when I seen 2 masked men coming down the street waving a gun at me, but
Okay, so you are saying you fired in self-defense.
yeah, I was in fear of my life.
Okay, Your Honor, we're going to reject the plea at this point in time. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, Mr. Odatelli, we have a couple options. You can have a breakout room with your client and take whatever time you need, or not. If you want to try again.
Yes, if we can, Your Honor.
Okay, so Mr. Hartung, do you have a few minutes to stick around?
I do.
All right, so Mr. Odatelli, I'm gonna put you in a breakout room with Mr. Monroe. So, Mr. Monroe, you may go automatically, or you may have to use the mouse to click on Zoom. There you go. All right. Back on the matter of the people of the state of Michigan versus Marcus Monroe, 22-20886 FC. So, Mr. Odatelli, how would you like to proceed now?
Your Honor, my client would like the plea. He's a bit nervous there. I think we went from factual basis into the testimony. So he wasn't sure what was going on, but he'd like to proceed with the plea if Mr. Hartung will still take that in this matter.
If he's going to testify as we discussed, that's fine, but I'll ask you, Mr. Odatelli, why don't you ask him the questions for this purpose of the plea, including what his anticipated testimony would be at trial before we have an officer going in and interview him.
Yes. So you want me to get the factual basis as well on this?
Yes, please.
Okay. So Mr. Monroe, on the date and time that was placed on the record in Madison Heights,
Madison Township.
I'm sorry, in Madison, sorry, in Madison Township, Did you have a weapon in your possession?
Yes,
What was that weapon?
380 handgun.
And was it in your name?
No,
Okay. You had it in your possession though, right?
yes,
Okay. Did you point it at the victim?
yes.
Okay. And what did you do with that weapon?
I fired at the victim.
Okay. Was that victim placed in a state of fear?
Yes,
Okay. And let's see. Your Honor, what was the address on that? I'm sorry.
Well, it would be, all right, so Mr. Monroe, as you said, on June 26th, you were in Madison Township in the county of Lenawee, is that correct?
yes, ma'am.
And you were at a Diamond's home, is that correct, her house?
Yeah.
Yes,
And you would agree that that house was in Madison Township?
yes.
Okay, Mr. Hartung, anything else?
Yes, Mr. Odell is going to need to solicit the anticipated testimony related to the co-defendants, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Monroe, who was with you on that day?
William Dillard.
Okay. And Mr. Monroe, why don't you tell us what happened with you and Mr. Dillard on that day?
We fired at the victims, alleged victims.
Okay. So when you said you fired at the alleged victims, when you said you fired at the alleged victims, who fired at the alleged victims? Was it you and Mr. Dillard?
Yes,
Okay. So earlier you said that there was a wrestling of the gun. Was there any wrestling of the gun?
no,
Okay. And when you said that there was a wrestling of the gun, did that come from a nervousness that we discussed because it's your first time giving any testimony?
yes,
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make that clear, Your Honor. And you saw Mr. Dillard firing?
yes,
Okay.
And he fired that weapon towards the vehicle?
yes,
Okay.
And just to make clear on this, just because my client doesn't have any information, you said, where was Mr. Tyndall during this?
he was inside the home.
Okay. Yeah. And that's your testimony at this time?
Yes,
Mr. Hartung, any follow-up?
Couple quick questions, Mr. Monroe. Make sure I understand the sequence here. You're saying the time they drove by, the vehicle drove by, when you indicated that you fired at the vehicle, saying that Mr. Dillard also fired at the vehicle at that time.
no, Mr. Dillard still didn't fire to the second time.
Okay. I guess I misunderstood what you said before. You said indicated that there was a firing that occurred to your side.
Yeah, but that was the second time the car came around, but I don't know if he fired first or if the car fired first at us. But I'm saying I fired at the vehicle first. When the car came back, I don't know if he fired first or if the vehicle fired first. It was you know what I'm saying? But he was side by side to me at that point in time.
Do you know who was in the vehicle?
I mean, I knew that just from text messages and talk before the shooting happened that it was Cruz Silva and Terrell Love, but Cruz Silva did have a mask on and I couldn't see Terrell Love in the passenger seat.
You knew they were coming over
Right.
from previous Snapchat or other types of messaging to you or to the crowd or to the people at the party, right?
That's correct.
And where were you at when you received that information?
I was outside of the house.
Okay, how far away from the road were you when this shooting occurred?
Probably just a couple of feet. I wasn't far. There was a tree right next to the road, and I was right behind the tree when it first rolled down.
And where was Mr. Dillard?
Mr. Dillard was behind me at that point. Mr. Dillard Mr. Diller was the one that notified me that the car was coming down the street.
Okay, all right. Prior to walking out by the roadside, did you have the gun with you?
Yeah, I had the gun on my person all night.
What kind of gun did Mr. Dillard have?
He had a 380 also.
Did Mr. Tyndall ever have a weapon in his hand that evening that you saw?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, are you satisfied, Mr. Hartung?
Yes.
All right, has the court complied, has the court complied with the MCR 6.302 B, C, and D? Mr. Hartung?
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Otatella?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, I accept the plea. It has been given understandably, voluntarily, and accurately. The defendant has full knowledge of his rights. He does have competent counsel. Other than the Killebrew agreement that was placed on the record, this court has made no agreement regarding the possibility of a plea or possible sentence in this case for the prosecutor, the defense attorney, the defendant, or anyone acting in the interest of either of them. I'm going to refer this matter to the probation department for a pre-sentence investigation. So, Mr. Otatella and Mr. Hartung, I'm going to give it my standard sentencing date. Obviously, if we need to move the sentencing date, that's fine, but it would make sure that the PSI is done in a timely manner. So I'm going to set this for sentencing on. Mr. Otatella, are you available August 3rd for sentencing at 8:15, and it can be done via Zoom if your client has no objection.
8:15 is perfect, Your Honor.
All right, so I'm going to set this for August 3rd at 8:15 for sentencing. So, Mr. Monroe, someone from the Michigan Department of Corrections is going to meet with you, and they're going to give you a packet to fill out, and then they're going to give you, sit down and meet with you, and they're going to ask questions. Be truthful with them about your background, be truthful about the events that occurred. They'll prepare a report. We will send that to both Mr. Hartung and Mr. Otatella. Mr. Otatella will review that with you before sentencing, and then we will see back on that day. Now, Mr. Monroe, you do have a right to be present in person for sentencing, but you can do it via Zoom if you would like. Do you care whether, or do you object to doing it via Zoom, or do you wish to be in person?
I have no problem either or.
Okay, so we'll do it Zoom. All right, anything else, Mr. Hartung or Mr. Otatella?
Not at this time.
Nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Otatella, thank you, Mr. Hartung, and thank you, Mr. Monroe. You're all set.
It would make Penny very happy if you would like, subscribe, and leave us a comment.